Hey, what is up? It's Ian Jolie, and welcome to the track-by-track commentary of my second album, Intimacy Without Rescue. It's a bit of a concept record. All 10 songs reflect on the feeling of being an imperfect person, loving imperfect people in imperfect situations. So let's get to it.
Intimacy without rescue. When I'm with you. Do you believe that?
Intimacy Without Rescue is the first song on the album. It's the titular song, but it was actually the 7th song that I wrote for the album. And when I wrote it, the focus and the theme of the album became clear to me. Structurally, what I like about the song is that it starts in a really uneven place. The beat on the drums is off. The snare drum hits on the and of 2 and 4, giving the whole thing a hiccup vibe, while the melodies and the harmonies stay pretty standard, pop punk, simple and catchy, keeping everything together. I like that the song builds and builds and builds and builds. The song has 3 distinct parts, and I like how in the first 2 parts it builds and builds with that hiccup, uneven tone, and then finally by the 3rd part, things click in place. You finally get a standard drum rhythm with a snare on 2 and 4, and the song explodes. This song is a bit of a mashup. Originally, the 3 sections of the song were actually 3 different songs that I mashed up together, and that's why there's no standard structure. No real chorus, no real verse. And I love how this song starts off this record.
I wish I had a place to hide. I wish I could go outside. There's a sort of soft
Soft Unease was originally written during the pandemic, right when we got the vaccine, and I had the thought that the pandemic was obviously really alienating, but also real life is alienating as well. And so that's where I came up with the hook. I wish I had a place to hide. I wish I could go outside. There's a sort of soft unease that comes along with being alive. I wanted to write a song that wasn't straightforward pop punk emo. That's why we've got the jazz chords, we've got the rapping, we've got the vocals in the verse that are sort of monotone and definitely distorted, but I still feel it's pretty grounded because of the drum beat and the catchiness of the vocal melody in the chorus. So I think it's a bit of a weird song, but I still think it's one of the catchiest things I've ever done.
I may be unlovable, but you're hard to love. We are not the stuff that Earth is made of.
The vocal melody in the song Space was inspired by the Simple Plan song Nostalgic. In that song, the melody in the verse is very, very simple. It goes from the root note da to the 7th da, and it's so simple. And I thought that I wanted to take the simplicity of that vocal melody and use it for my own. And so I added da 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 da. And the melodies throughout the entire song are pretty straightforward. And so I relied pretty heavily on my vocal performance in order to make it interesting. The actual content of the song was inspired by the fact that I had a thing with a friend that went on for about 6 months. For 6 months, she would tell me things like, I like you, Ian, but I'm not sure how much I like you. And so that really put me in an anxious state. When I finally cut things off, I was thankful for the space, and so that was sort of what the song's about. The lyrics in the chorus are somewhat literal. It's how I felt at the time. Obviously not healthy, but it goes, I may be unlovable, but you're hard to love. We are not the stuff that Earth is made of. And that's how I felt during the worst parts of that relationship.
Tonight I don't wanna be alive. Lord knows how I have tried. Yes, I'm a passerby.
Passerby is also about that same relationship I had with that friend. It's definitely an exaggerated version of the feeling that I had, but during my lowest points, I felt pretty damn low. It felt to me that I was sort of like watching my life go by, and I didn't really have any sort of agency about it, that I was like basically a passerby. I started to think about the metaphor of a subway, about being in an airport and these like transition points in life. And I kept on reflecting on those themes and those ideas, and the other metaphor of seeing your life on a TV screen and that glowing and that having more reality and emotional valence than your actual life felt really resonant. I knew it had to have a playful, ironic, performative element to it. And so that's why in the second section of the song, it goes into swing time, dot, da, dot, da, dot, da, dot. It almost feels like a circus performance a little bit. It's definitely the darkest song on the record, and I almost considered not putting it on the album, but ultimately I felt that even though the feelings were exaggerated, it came from a very real place. It came from an honest place, and so I didn't feel right leaving it out of the album.
She's so proud she removed the stitches alone. She smiles at the bruises as if they found a home.
Your Permission, I've heard, is the favorite song from most of my friends who have listened to the album. It's definitely the silliest song. It's definitely the most fun song on the album. The guitar riff is inspired by the Fall Out Boy song, The Takeover, The Break's Over. When I originally heard that guitar riff, my mind was blown. I was like, oh my god, you can literally create a guitar riff just based on fifths and octaves, and it's still catchy as hell. And ever since I heard that song, I was like, one day I have to write a song with a guitar riff just based on fifths and octaves. Thematically, the song was inspired by meeting a girl. Within 5 minutes of meeting this lady, she told me that she was proud of the bruises that were on her legs. She was one of the most outgoing people I've ever met, and so I thought it would be interesting to write a song about it. I've always liked Green Day songs that take a rebellious figure, a bit of a riot girl, and use that rebelliousness as like part of the love song of it all. And so that was the idea behind this song. The other thing I like about this song is that like leftists and feminists will always say things like consent is sexy. And I was like, that should be a song. And so that's where the lyrics, I just want your permission, come from.
And all of the time we wasted holding heat the way that we did, separate and close as needed, smoldering.
Holding Heat. Holding Heat is the first song that I wrote for this second album. It's definitely one of the most cheesy pop punk, like bubblegum pop punk things I've ever written. It's about the same lady that I wrote the song Space and Passerby about. And this was sort of the beginning of our romantic sort of sexual situation going on. Even at the beginning, it was very on and off, on and off. We would talk every single day for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then she would go cold and I wouldn't hear from her for weeks. And so that's the idea of Holding Heat came from. There's a lot of metaphors that people have regarding like how hot someone is or the heat of a relationship. And I was thinking about it and I was like, what if that was like literal? Like what if the relationship was literally fire, literally heat, literally so hot it was burning off your skin, literally so hot that it could be represented by volcanoes. And so that's where the idea of the song comes from. Melodically and harmonically, this song was also inspired by Simple Plan. Simple Plan's song, Nothing Changes. What I love about that band is they're able to take really poppy melodies, but also place them sort of weirdly, but also like standardly in really standard harmonic progressions. Pierre's vocals, at least melodically, have a real focus and gravity to them. They hold on to a pop hook that sort of really takes into account the harmonic information while also being its own thing. And he's able to stretch vocal melodies for like 2 to 4 to sometimes 8 bars. I've always thought that was like super interesting. And so I've always wanted to write some vocal melodies sort of in that style. And so that like vocal melody confidence is sort of where the vocal melodies in the chorus come from.
If politics is fashion, she is Louis Vuitton. Sometimes I fantasize about her with no makeup on. Does she?
If politics is fashion. So the idea of this song came from a video game, Class of '09. During one of the narrative thread lines, one of the characters says, if politics is fashion, I immediately thought that was amazing as a concept. Because it feels that way, doesn't it? It often feels like politics isn't something that comes from a genuine place or a genuine reflection of the world, but something that people can wear as a badge. And so like just with Holding Heat, I was like, what if that metaphor was actually completely literal? What if politics was literally about fashion? And so then I thought of the line, if politics is fashion, she's Louis Vuitton. Sometimes I fantasize about her without any makeup on. And so that led to the idea of everybody like wearing makeup and not being their true selves in politics. And I was like, there's a lot of metaphorical energy there. I could probably explore that, which I do explore in the verses. The chorus lyrics are very, very literal. They're very, very literal thoughts about how happiness and meaning aren't the same thing, about how a lot of the people I came up with in the union movement were to blame and how we're complicit in a lot of the stuff that is going on. When I was listening to the song back, I felt that that dark energy wasn't really being conveyed enough. You know, it sounds like a pop ballad. There's those arpeggios in the verse. The chorus sounds like a very standard pop punk sort of like, here we go. And so I wanted to add some darkness in the end, which is why in the coda of the song, I start screaming in a way that is more aggressive than I've ever screamed before. In fact, I screamed so aggressively for the recording that I was literally unable to talk for 2 weeks afterwards. It was like extremely unhealthy for my voice, but I love how it came out. I love the couplet that I screamed. I knew a girl, never did we change the world. I knew a girl, never did we change the world.
If all the world's a stage, she won't perform. A fire truck ablaze to keep us warm. I'm seeing now the heart within the storm.
Riot Girl is pop punk maxing. During the last 6 months of writing this album, I had been going out a lot and I met a bunch of these friends who go to these emo nights and a bunch of pop punk events. And I was like, I want to write the most pop punk song I could possibly write. There are Blink-182 references in there. There are System of a Down references in there. Sort of like the song Your Permission, it also takes that Green Day aesthetic of taking rebelliousness and then sort of sublimating that into a romantic sort of situation. And here I'm taking this Riot Girl and literally elevating her to the status of a messianic figure. I was writing these lyrics and I was like, let's take it further, let's take it further, let's take it further. And I thought it came out really nice.
The body is a door.
Gin and Juice was the last song I wrote for this album, and as I was listening to the 9 songs I already had, I realized that this album was a lot more pop than my first album. I do think that this album is better. I do think that this album has more intricacy and interesting things to say, but that first album definitely has a lot more aggression to it, a lot more angst, a lot more like pop punk angst. And so I was like, I gotta write an emo punk rock song. This song has connections to other songs I've written before. Specifically, I'm calling back to the song on the first record, Anxiety. Both of those songs literalize the Adam and Eve story, but then subvert them into a sort of like evil situation. Gin and Juice also calls back to my other song, Ipecac and Cider, off my first record, where I'm taking the idea of two substances in the first verse and second verse and keeping them separate but thematically together, and having the song develop through those two ideas. This is the only song on the record where the vast majority of the vocals are not sung. They're spoken or screamed or yelled. I was honestly pretty nervous if I could actually like pull it off. Never in a song before have I not sung for the vast majority of it. And also coming off the experience of my song, If Politics is Fashion, I knew I had the capacity to completely wreck my voice. And so I wanted to be able to scream in a sustainable, healthy way, because I knew that I would be screaming for quite a bit and that I wanted to do 7 or 8 takes in order to get the best performance for the record. Ultimately, I pulled it off. I've heard from some of my friends who are into more aggressive, harder music that this is their favorite song on the record. And so that makes me happy. It makes me feel like, yeah, I accomplished the thing that I wanted to accomplish.
Well, Juniper, she changes and doesn't change. I wish you all the...
Juniper is actually the oldest song on the record. I wrote it almost nearly a decade ago. I was dating a lady who was very, very depressed, and this song is about navigating that. Musically, what I like about it is that it ties back to the first song on the record, Intimacy Without Rescue. Just like that first song, but in Juniper, the beat is off. There's a hiccup element to it. The beat goes boo, chop, boo, chop, boo, chop, boo, chop, making everything feel a little bit off. I like how I use that rhythmic element in starting off the record, but also in ending the record. Harmonically, the song is really interesting. It's one of the few songs on the record that uses a very, very unusual chord progression, also supplemented by the fact that there are a bunch of non-chordal notes within the chords. Everything is weird about the instrumentals in this. I wanted to extend the weirdness of the harmonic information into the vocal. I sort of forced the raspiness in my vocal that honestly I was pretty surprised I was able to keep it all the way through the song. And then there's very, very aggressive vibrato that's going on throughout the entire song. Also like Intimacy Without Rescue, but here in Juniper, here the verse feels very, very weird energetically, which gets paid off in the chorus when things align harmonically, melodically, rhythmically. To me, it's a very satisfying pop release. And I love songs like that in general, songs that sort of build a lot of tension and weirdness, but then that tension and weirdness builds up and then you get that pop release, that melody that like, ooh, this feels good. But you sort of had to earn it by going through all that tension and weirdness in the first place. All right, that's my second album, Intimacy Without Rescue. Go stream it now. It's on all major platforms right now. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Bandcamp, wherever you get your music, the album is out right now. Thank you for listening and have a good day.